Hey, hero. Would you like to take a break? Get some shopping done, try your hand in some underground fighting, or play with one of 2 slot machines? I think I've got the perfect place for you. Towns have been fixtures in the design of RPGs basically forever, but they're so universal that it can be easy to take them for granted and forget what they're there to do. You don't make a great RPG town by just slapping some cottages and a store in a field. The designers of the best RPG towns understand the town's role as a sanctuary and space for world building, and use that to tie together place, story, and mechanics into one entity. Let's unpack some great RPG towns and see how they make something functional, yet memorable. Today's episode sponsor is the .design top-level domain. Yeah, the domain name registrar Porkbun is the place to go for professional and aspiring designers to turn something like princevegetadesign.com to the more elegant princevegeta.design. Nice. Very classy. .design works great for web and UX designers, interior design, or other design disciplines. Game design. Whether you're just starting out as a designer or looking for a way to improve your online presence, a .design domain name tells the world who you are and what you do right from the start. You can also easily hook your new domain into completely free WordPress hosting, Squarespace, Wix, or fully custom websites. Major brands like Spotify, Slack, Airbnb, Adobe, and Amazon are already using .design. .design reflects what you do as a designer, improves your branding, looks great on a business card, and you can get your domain by clicking the link in the description. Alright, so how do you whip up an excellent RPG town? It helps to look at what great towns are doing to a game's design. The first thing is the most basic. Towns are a sanctuary. A town provides a place to resupply and take a breather. A place to recover from the previous battles and prepare for those to come. They stand as a breakpoint from the period of resource depletion that makes up the gameplay loop of many RPGs. Take Pokemon. Just about any town in Pokemon functions as an oasis to heal your Pokemon and restock your supplies before heading out again to train. The trek from town to town is treated as a test of endurance and resource management, where you manage your items and the fighting ability of your Pokemon. The better you prepare in town, the easier of a time you'll have out on the road, and the longer you'll be able to train up. Healing at the Poké Center also sets the town as the place where you'll appear again if you run out of luck in the wilderness, which reinforces the idea of the town as a checkpoint. But that would be pretty boring if a town was just a glorified gas station. A town's role as a sanctuary isn't limited to how it replenishes your resources lost during combat. It can also be a break from the combat-focused gameplay loop itself. The standard gameplay in an RPG is tense, risky, combative, and stressful. And if that's all there was in the world, the game could become too one-note to stay interesting. The town can be less scary in contrast by focusing on other types of gameplay. It might involve hunting for secrets hidden in corners, going down dialogue trees with NPCs, playing mini-games you can try and retry, or other things that don't usually have failure states like combat does. Like in Dragon Quest, towns in Dragon Quest are about talking with NPCs and finding secrets. The town's gameplay loop puts combat aside and focuses on the role-playing part of the role-playing game. You can learn about the world, read only the red books for recipes and lore, break pots for items, rummage around in random closets, and tackle town-focused side quests. You're committing home invasions, but it's fine. There's no consequence or risk that you'll hit a game over. You can explore the city's nooks and crannies to help immerse yourself in the town and bring the game to life while you're taking a breather. Focusing on different types of gameplay also helps give a town a purpose when the combat doesn't revolve around depleting your resources. Xenoblade Chronicles refills your health automatically, and your abilities work on cooldown timers. Once combat is over, you're pretty much ready to go again forever. The game's towns aren't there so much to restock, but instead they're built with their own progression and reward systems. Each city has a large number of NPCs with generic merchants, named characters, and quest givers. Towns have a whole unique economy where you barter collectible items and materials for unique items you can't find in shops. Each town is a part of a city-wide reputation system called the Affinity Chart. As you meet named NPCs and complete quests, you'll fill out the chart and you'll gain affinity points for that city that accumulate and show as a 5-star rating. As your bond with the city increases, you'll get access to more quests and better items to trade. You'll also get to influence the relationships that the NPCs have with each other. You might bring together a couple by helping them create a storybook for an orphan child, or you might help a man stop a loan shark from ruining his life. It's a dialogue-focused mode of gameplay that rewards you with experience and items, and helps bring your party members closer and gain new passive abilities and optional heart-to-heart conversations. It's a great system to focus on when you're feeling like doing something other than combat for a bit, and still gives players a ton of useful rewards along the way. It's starting to sound like the town and the dungeon are basically two separate games you switch between, but that doesn't have to be the case. Even though they focus on different styles of gameplay, one can still impact the other. Dungeons are more fun if they're full of hidden secrets to uncover, but how do you split the difference between secrets that are too hidden to be found reliably and ones that are too obvious to be fun to find? You need some subtle hints, and towns can play a role here too. Town dialogue doesn't have to have an immediate impact. Townspeople live, work, and play in the surrounding area, so it makes sense for town conversations to be laced with rumors and tips about where you could be heading next and what you might want to watch out for. Things you might want to store in the back of your mind to look into later. Town dialogue can work as a sort of diegetic hint system. Final Fantasy V is very good at leading players towards cool stuff if they take a moment to really listen to the randos about town. You can overhear the guards of Castle Walls talking about rumors of the summoned Shiva inside the waterfall behind the grounds, or about the tantalizing treasures guarded by high-level enemies in the depths of the castle. You don't have to pursue the rumors, they're just optional things you can do when you feel you're ready. If you stumble into Istri, in the northwestern region of the world, you can find a ton of cool things through villager hints. Ramu is hiding out in the nearby forest, striking at anyone who wanders in. Some kid is babbling on about taking a spin around a flower bed, whatever that means. Huh? Oh. There's a farmhand who will mention how the sheep have a bad attitude and will kick you if you get too close. Figure out that one and you'll get to talk to a bard nearby who will teach you a song. Every village or safe haven in Final Fantasy V has some sort of optional hint or clue for you to pursue, so reaching a new place can be a fun way of finding out useful optional bonuses nearby. It's a great way to make secrets feel less arbitrary, boost the exploration side of the game, and to make the townspeople feel like they're actually living in the area. So far, this has been a very mechanics-focused look into the RPG town. But the best of them are more than just shops and minigames. Towns are places where people congregate. A town is the center of life for the people that live in them. And the most believable and interesting towns in fiction can reflect that for their fictional residents. RPG towns should be crafted to reflect the humanity of the people that live there, their hopes and dreams, their jobs and hobbies, and showcase a history and culture of their own. That might sound like you should foist an info dump onto players, but there are more subtle ways to allude to this sort of depth. Towns can be a great tool to help drive home a story with an abstract high concept in a more concrete way. Chrono Cross's Arni village is the hometown of our protagonist Surge. The story of Chrono Cross is about traveling between two timelines that diverge around an event in Surge's past. Surge grew up in Arni village, and the first version of it you see is a super standard sleepy JRPG home village. The most unique thing about it is that it does not get blown up by anyone. Early in the game, something happens, and you first head back to this other world version of Arni. Something's wrong though. You know everyone there, but no one knows who you are anymore. The village itself is humming along just as it always had. It's not burnt to the ground or taken over by a tyrant king or anything. It's just the village as it would be if you weren't a part of it. Another Arni is familiar as a place, but the connections between the people of the town are just a little off. Even the town's music theme is changed in a way that reflects the new reality. The upbeat, livelier tone of Home Arni's theme is replaced with a more cautious and subdued one. The melody matches, but the music reflects the way Surge feels in this new world's version of Arni. It's the same, but slightly different. Not in a menacing way, just more melancholy at seeing the familiar change to something you don't quite recognize anymore. The new version of Arnie is great as the first visceral window into the game's high concept of alternate timelines by putting you right away into a place that you as the main character have the deepest connection to, and how that place completely changes based on one difference. RPG towns can be amazing vehicles for environmental storytelling. The story isn't just about dialogue from character to character. The environmental design of a town can be itself a storytelling device. As places your characters travel in and around, towns are full of potential to imply setting details through distinct architecture and set pieces. Character motivations can build up from what you can see about the circumstances surrounding them. Final Fantasy XIV relies heavily on environmental storytelling in its cities to help make the world feel lived in. The city's design paints a vivid picture of what everyday life is like in them, even if the player doesn't get much to interact with beyond major story quests. The city of Yulemoor, from the game's Shadowbringers expansion, is a great example. Yulemoor is a tiny island off the coast, blatantly divided between rich and poor residents. The wealthy live in the canopy, where they live lives of hedonistic pleasure and bonded servants in the lavish upper levels of the city. You only go into two parts, a parlor and a gentleman's club, but the environments make it easy to get a sense of this area. Below the canopy is the understory, which houses the Yulemoran military facilities and the city jail, free from the gaudy decor above. Below, by the city's entrance, are customs offices and bureaucratic facilities, separating the interior from the shanty towns all around. The derelicts and the gate town are filled with rickety shacks built with wood gathered from a ship graveyard surrounding the island. Here and there, you'll spot details that hint at the city's society, like a resident hoarding a piece of fancy furniture or a rug. The social dynamics underpinning the story are made clear by the environmental details. They paint the residents as literal bottom feeders waiting for scraps from those living above, and create a platform from which other characters can branch out. They can tell their own stories that feel more compelling when put into this environmental context. The careful attention to detail in every section of the town turns Yulemoor into a twisted character in itself. It's a much more evocative piece of storytelling than if the same details were just spelled out in dialogue. Not that they aren't, but the environment greatly supports it. It's important to remember that towns should be made up of a lot of people that have their own lives that don't involve the main characters. You probably can't actually make thousands of people with fleshed out backstories, but you can do things that at least hint at a world beyond the party, and even little nods can make the town seem much more alive. Towns that seem to exist just to interact with player characters don't feel like real places, more like a theme park facade or a Potemkin village. If everyone's standing around with the same basic dialogue for hour 2 and hour 30, that place will feel like a cheap imitation of a town, not a real one. An easy way to fix it is to have the town change over the course of the game. This shows up a lot in central hub towns, like Rogueport in Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, or Toad Town in Paper Mario 64. Since you revisit these places over and over, the towns have to change anyway to stay interesting. Chapter to chapter, different town features are added. NPCs change and are swapped out, special events are updated, and new areas open up as you gain new key abilities in a Metroidvania-esque way. Each new area breathes extra life into the world, and seeing new facets of an area can provide interesting details to a familiar place. Trails in the Sky does it just with dialogue, where most NPCs seem to have their own personal storyline that progresses throughout the game. You're not involved directly, mostly, but their lives are changing while you're away. Completionists might not like this very much though, as because the storylines don't revolve around you, you don't need to be there to advance them. If you miss a line or two, you might miss out on fun details, or even an entire side quest if there was a tie-in there. We're just scratching the surface of what roles towns can play in RPGs. There's more to talk about with minigames, trope subversions, what happens if you start breaking the rules, non-traditional towns, and more. But I think we'll leave that for another episode. Now that you know a little more about what they're made of, head down to the comments and let us know your favorite RPG towns. Great storylines and interesting environmental storytelling are especially welcome. Bonus points for ones that aren't strictly towns. Towns are an enduring fixture in RPGs, and the best ones can hold the heart and soul of a fantastic game. Understand what the best towns do, and you can make a home away from home.